Thank you so much for joining us for CBN Newswatch on this Friday. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, as the invasion in Ukraine continues, President Biden announced a new deal on natural gas with the European Union to make them less reliant on Russia. We'll have that story coming up. Plus, meet some missionaries who decided to stay in Ukraine to help those in need. These stories and more are coming up next.
This is CBN Newswatch.
And we begin this half hour with the Russian invasion getting worse in Ukraine. Now the United States is getting ready for tens of thousands of refugees. Also, President Biden announces a new gas deal in Europe, and NATO allies are readying for President Putin's possible use of weapons of mass destruction. CBN's Brody Carter has our top story.
Unclaimed ashes of the dead are piling up at Kyiv's main crematorium. Workers there say they're unable to collect them as so many have left Ukraine's capital to seek safety. That's happening amid reports that Moscow has forcibly removed hundreds of thousands of civilians from devastated Ukrainian cities and taken them to Russia to be used as hostages to pressure Ukraine to surrender. At the NATO Emergency Summit Thursday, more aid for Ukraine was announced, but it fell short of Ukraine's request for aircrafts, tanks, and other weapons. Today, as the summit wrapped up, President Biden announcing a new deal on natural gas with the European Union. So Europe won't need to import as much energy from Russia, which supplies almost 40% of the EU's gas and a quarter of its oil.
This initiative focuses on two core issues. One, helping Europe reduce its dependency on Russian gas as quickly as possible. And secondly, reducing Europe's demand for gas overall.
The president also acknowledging Thursday that Russian sanctions will have other effects, like food shortages, including here in the U.S.
With regard to food shortages, yes, we did talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well.
Despite the president's sanctions and other economic moves, Americans want him to be stronger. A new Associated Press poll shows just 56% think that he has been tough enough on Russia, and only about a quarter are very confident that he has the ability to handle a crisis. And in Ukraine itself, with Russia's military bogged down, the U.S. and NATO allies are planning for what Putin might do next, warning what would happen if he uses weapons of mass destruction, including chemical weapons.
We would respond. We would respond if he uses it. The nature of the response would depend on the nature of the use. It would trigger a response in kind. Whether or not you're asking whether NATO would cross, we'd make that decision at the time.
For now, heavy fighting has led to shellings in Kharkiv and Kyiv, leaving houses on fire. And this bird's-eye view of Mariupol shows a city in ruin. And the government of Mariupol said today 300 people died in a Russian airstrike on March 16th at a theater being used as a bomb shelter. The deadly warfare has meant an increasing flood of refugees, more than 3.5 million. The U.S. will take in 100,000 of them. The overwhelming majority are still in Europe. The lion's share have gone to Poland, where President Biden will travel Saturday. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Our senior international correspondent, George Thomas, is in Kyiv. He joins us now. So, George, you've been in Kyiv now for about 2 weeks or so. What's the mood in the city as the war now enters its second month?
I had a chance to meet three owners of three very well-known restaurants here in Kyiv, and they told me that as of today, their doors are open. And I said, why? I said, you guys are in the middle of a war. They said, no, we need to show the world that we are coming back and that this city, the capital of Ukraine, is coming back. So their doors are opening. Obviously, there's sort of a cautious optimism because of the advancements that the Ukrainians have made in the last week, pushing those Russian forces further and further away from the capital city. The reporting is that they're now about 35 kilometers away. So their counteroffensives, both in the east and the west, continue. And then also in the south, in places like Kherson and Mykolaiv, there are advancements that the Ukrainians are continuing to go against those Russian forces. So they are taking some kind of inspiration and hope in that. And so they're opening up their restaurants. Coffee places are open, shops are open, and there's a sense of normalcy, Ephraim. There's more traffic on the road, but still the bombs continue to go off, the air raid sirens continue to shrill.
Wow. NATO is making some significant troop deployments in Eastern Europe. Tell us about those.
Yeah, they've doubled the number of troops, number of places that they are deploying these troops, from Estonia to Latvia to Lithuania, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, and Romania. Obviously, they're concerned, so they're sending more and more troops. The bulk of those troops heading to Poland, which sits right across from Ukraine. So NATO is sending a very clear message to Russia that they are gearing up for any potential moves into the NATO countries.
All right, George Thomas reporting for us from Kyiv. Thank you so much for your reporting. I want to remind you at home that you are able to help Operation Blessing's disaster relief efforts in this horrible war and humanitarian crisis in Ukraine. Simply call this number, 1-800-700-7000. Let us know that you want to give to the Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. Now, you can also write us at CBN Center, the address Virginia Beach, Virginia, the zip code 23463. Simply note Disaster Relief Fund in the memo line of your check, and you can text us as well. Simply text OB Crisis to 71777, and you can visit our website, cbn.com, as well as ob.org. Anything you're able to do to assist is greatly appreciated in this hour of need. CBN is also hosting an exclusive live prayer event for Ukraine today at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can register to join the effort at the address you see there on the screen. 700 Club co-host Terry Musin will bring you the latest on CBN's Orphans Promise and how it's helping victims in the war in Ukraine, as well as lead you in prayer. Confirmation hearings for Supreme Court nominee Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson wrapped up yesterday. The Judiciary Committee now preparing for an early April vote on whether to advance her nomination. After 2 days of direct questions and answers, Jackson got a break while outside experts weighed in on her merits. As Caitlin Burke reports, there were tense moments, specifically between Democrats and witnesses called by Republicans.
Have you offered any testimony to the January 6th Commission?
Have not been asked.
Is Joseph R. Biden of Delaware the duly elected and lawfully serving President of the United States of America?
He is the President of this country.
In questioning Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall, Senator Whitehouse also accused him of taking part in robocalls promoting the January 6th march on the Capitol. Marshall deferred all questions on the topic. When it came to the other outside witnesses, their testimony represented the clashing views of Judge Jackson already presented by Democrat and Republican lawmakers.
Senators this week quoted Dr. King. And as I am reminded, to paraphrase, King said, "Give us the ballot so we could put judges on the bench who will do justice and love mercy." Judge Jackson will do exactly that.
Ultimately, we cannot expect someone who subscribes to critical race theory to defend and protect the Constitution, because CRT asserts that the Constitution is not worth defending.
More friendly witnesses included a childhood friend of Jackson, the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, and the president of NOBLE, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives.
So there have been charges made yesterday, day before, even this morning, that she is somehow part of a, quote, anti-incarceration, anti-police movement, that somehow she is affiliated with a defund the police movement. Would you or your organization have endorsed her if that were true?
We never saw that in our research. That never came out. And I don't really think it's true, sir.
From the other side, witnesses included Eleanor McCullen, the plaintiff in a free speech case tried by Judge Jackson, and Alessandra Serrano, the chief legal officer for an organization working to end child trafficking.
How did it make you feel in Judge Jackson's brief when she referred to pro-life women as hostile, noisy crowd of in-your-face protesters?
Well, as I said, it made me very sad, extremely sad, and that's not the case at all.
The American Bar Association participated in the peer review portion of the confirmation process. ABA's standing committee defended the well-qualified rating the group gave Judge Jackson.
Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
And coming up, meet the missionaries who are choosing to stay in Ukraine to help others affected by this war. But first, let's head to Jerusalem, where our Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell is standing by. He has a look at what to expect on today's Jerusalem Dateline. Chris.
Well, Ephraim, on this week's Jerusalem Dateline, we'll have an update on the Iranian nuclear deal and how it might make the Middle East a much more dangerous place. We'll also have a report on Israel setting up the first civilian field hospital inside Ukraine, and a story on Ukraine's top female runner taking part in the Jerusalem Marathon. You can watch Jerusalem Dateline on the CBN News channel tonight at 8:30 Eastern or through the CBN News app. Stay with us. There's more Newswatch after the break.
When the war came to Ukraine, a small band of Christian missionaries chose to stay and serve rather than leave and flee for safety. They've become a lifeline now for thousands of people in need of food, encouragement, and simple human companionship. George Thomas brings us the story now from Kyiv.
When war started and Russian bombs began falling on Kyiv,
we had our bags packed because it's just like you're in a rush and there's a new situation. Out of a sudden in the morning, you wake up and you hear the sound of bombs. So you're like in a rush and you're like, whoa, like what is happening?
Marie and Jafin had to make a decision whether to leave the capital.
It was not an easy decision, but until we prayed. But once we prayed, it was a very easy decision.
Jafin is from India. His wife, Marie, is German. Both missionaries to Ukraine with the group Youth with a Mission.
Growing up in India and also doing ministry in India, this was not my first time being in a dangerous situation. In fact, this is the third time.
They decided to stay because of a commitment to serve the people here, despite the very real danger to their lives.
We also committed to marriage, staying in good and in bad times. We are not only here trying to make an impact when times are favorable, but especially when things go really bad and when people are leaving. This is the time when we actually need to stay.
This is the heart of Kyiv. It's popularly known as Maidan. And today, it is a fortress, concrete slabs, sandbags, and these metal structures are aimed at stopping Russian tanks. Today, half the city has already evacuated. And for folks at YWAM Kyiv, it's all about ministering to those who are still in the city.
30 minutes south of Maidan.
I'm from Germany.
Wow. Jafin and Marie sprung into action, turning the sprawling YWAM campus into a humanitarian aid hub.
And they're just dropping all of these things here. So our job is to sort all these things out so it looks chaotic.
Natalia Turbina and her two sons work in the kitchen, making meals for the folks in the neighborhood.
It depends on the day. Sometimes there are days when we cook for 1,000 people, sometimes 500 or 600.
Wow, look at you peel. You are like a peeling machine. Wow, look at how fast she's peeling those potatoes. Wow.
The only thought that gave me peace was to go back to Ukraine. So that's why I'm here. Okay, and while I talk, I try to keep my eye on the 19A.
Katarina, also a YWAM missionary here, is from Finland.
I'm not saying that God was the one who forced me to go to the war zone, or that it was somehow like I didn't have a choice. I had a choice. That was my choice. My choice was to come here, and God opened the door. Vysičas doma?
She evacuated just before war started, but returned days later.
Wait, we're walking up 12 flights of stairs?
Yeah.
Got it.
Now Katerina hits the streets of Kyiv delivering food and other aid supplies to those unable to leave their apartments.
Thank you for how much you love her.
Each visit ending with time of prayer.
That's okay, I don't know Ukrainian either.
While Katerina makes her daily deliveries, David Selsky, who normally handles maintenance on the YWAM campus, is making dangerous missions to evacuate people trapped behind Russian lines.
Every time when I go to these areas, I prepare myself that I might not get out of there. I pray every time. I'm not counting, but I've evacuated more than 100 people. I just work and work as long as I can, and as long as God allows me to help.
In another part of campus, Julia Kentz, who has been with YWAM for 5 years, is on the phone taking orders from a nearby neonatal hospital. Almost every other day, YWAM campuses in Germany and other European countries are shipping medical supplies to Kyiv for distribution. Ken's daily prayer is that God will sow confusion among Russian forces trying to encircle her capital.
There is this very good saying that if Russia will put down their weapons, there's going to be no war. But if Ukraine will put down their weapons, there's going to be no Ukraine. And this is so true.
When they're not handling day-to-day logistics or sorting through all the supplies coming in from around the world, Jafine and Marie visit elderly homes, bringing food and lots of warm hugs.
We are so bored, but the time flies when you are here. It is so tender. It is something for the soul. It is so pleasant. It is wonderful.
For Jafine, Marie, and others at YWAM, ministering in Ukraine's war zone is ultimately about fulfilling a commitment to serve.
I think it's not so much about handing out food packages now or like cooking meals or like distributing some humanitarian aid. That is not the main thing that God has been preparing me for, because everybody can do that. But the hard thing to do is to do it while you hear the shelling of bombs and while you see continuously on the news how in your city, not far away from you, a building is burning and people are dying. But I just do it because of love for the country and because of commitment to saying I'm not stepping away. And then if I feed 2 people or if I help to feed 1,000 people a day, maybe in my heart it doesn't make a difference because my commitment to God is just the same.
George Thomas, CBN News, Kyiv, Ukraine.
Still ahead, the countdown begins to the Final Four in this year's March Madness. Sports Director Sean Brown is joining us next with some highlights. Please stay with us. This year's NCAA March Madness is well underway. Now the regional semifinals, known as the Sweet 16, they started on Thursday and will lead to the Final Four teams this Sunday. Joining us with more on March Madness is CBN Sports Director Sean Brown. So, Sean, what teams are playing today and who do you think will make it to the Final Four?
Ephraim, it's my favorite time of year, my friend. A lot of excitement. After last night's games between Arkansas, Gonzaga, Michigan, Villanova, Texas Tech, and Duke, Arkansas, Villanova, and Houston have advanced to the Elite Eight. They will play the winner of tonight's games between St. Peter, Purdue, Providence, Kansas, North Carolina, UCLA, Iowa State, and Miami. Who do I think is going to advance to the Final Four? I've got Duke, Villanova, North Carolina, and Kansas. I love this tournament because anybody can win. Any team can win if you show up, if you continue to play the entire game, both halves, and you shoot well, you play defense. Defense wins games. Any team can win, even a 15 seed like St. Peter. So I'm very excited. But those are my 4 teams. I'm going with Duke, Villanova, North Carolina, and Kansas.
All right, St. Peter's from my hometown, Jersey City, so like that. Did you do a bracket this year, and how have you done so far, if you did? I imagine you did.
Ephraim, why are you asking about my bracket? Come on. My bracket's like most people's brackets. This is busted. My bracket was busted when Kentucky lost in the first round, okay? I had Kentucky going to the Final Four. I had Gonzaga going to the Final Four. I had Gonzaga winning the whole thing, okay? So my bracket's busted. So, yeah, I usually do fairly well. But, again, any team can win. You take a team like a St. Peter, a 15 seed, that beats Kentucky. They go on to beat, which is a number 2 seed coming in, Murray State, which is number 7. Tonight they've got Purdue, which will be tough for them because Purdue, out of the teams that are left, they're probably the best three-point shooting team left, and they're big. And so we'll have to see. But, again, on any given night, any team can win. As long as you show tenacity, as long as you're aggressive, any team can win. But I've got Duke winning the whole thing now. I didn't have them even in the Final Four. But I'm going to rock with Duke because they've got a reason. With Coach K's last year, I'm really pulling for him. It'll be just a great end to a great man and his legacy as a college basketball coach.
Indeed, on the same page there. So what can we expect this weekend on Going the Distance?
Got exciting things happening on Going the Distance. We've got a story, as you know, Colts quarterback Carson Wentz was traded to the Washington Commanders, my team. But a lot of people are saying that they don't know if he's going to be able to play as he once did. And so I'm reflecting on a story that my friend Tom Buring did a while ago that talks about why he plays the game for that audience of one. And so I'm really excited to see how hopefully he'll turn things around in D.C. But we also go to the University of Kentucky. My good friend Will Dawson does a great story with Alex Deegan on the baseball team. There's a picture there talking about finding his identity in Christ and not the sport of baseball. So just an exciting weekend with some great stories by two of my colleagues.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Sean. I want to remind you at home that you can catch Going the Distance with Sean Brown this weekend on the CBN News Channel. It airs Sunday at 6:30 Eastern Time, or you can watch it on the CBN News app at any time. Simply download that. Stay with us. We've got your Friday Faithful coming up right after this short break. Time now for your Friday Faithful. Before we say goodbye, I want to remind you of this. It's a simple truth. God is faithful, and that is true. Even when you aren't so faithful, He is still God, and He is indeed always good. With that, I encourage you to make this a fabulous Friday, and be sure to have yourself a wonderful weekend. Do it on purpose and with purpose. That'll do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. You can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel at any time, as well as online, cbnnews.com. Let us know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. And, of course, you can reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here next time. Bye-bye.